All right, today we're going to make the invisible, well, visible. We're talking about force. It's this fundamental push and pull that governs literally everything, from how planets orbit the sun to why the phone you're holding stays in your hand. It is the silent architect of our entire universe.
So here's a question for you. What does taking a simple walk down the street have in common with building a massive skyscraper? It seems like they're worlds apart, right? But the answer to both is force. Every single step you take, every steel beam in a high-rise, it's all part of this constant, incredibly complex dance of pushes and pulls. So here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what a force actually is. Then we'll get into the absolute essentials, Newton's 3 laws. After that, we're going to clear up that classic confusion between mass and weight. We'll tackle friction, that force that's always around. And finally, we'll pull back the curtain and see how engineers actually draw these invisible forces to build the world we live in.
Okay, let's dive right in. At its very core, what is a force? I mean, we use the word all the time, but in physics, it's not some vague idea. It's a very precise, very real thing.
Simply put, a force is any interaction, a push or a pull that tries to change an object's motion. You push a book, it slides. You squeeze a spring, it compresses. That interaction, that's the force. But here's the crucial part. It's what we call a vector. That means it doesn't just have a size or magnitude, it also has a specific direction and a point where it's being applied. All three are super important.
Now, we can basically sort all forces into two main flavors. First, you've got your contact forces. These are pretty intuitive, right? It's when you physically push a box or kick a ball. Then you've got the more mysterious ones, action at a distance forces. Think about gravity, pulling you down to Earth right now, or a magnet grabbing a paperclip. There's no touching involved, but the force is definitely there.
Okay, so you really can't talk about forces without talking about the guy who literally wrote the rule book for motion, Sir Isaac Newton. Yeah, way back in the 17th century, he laid down 3 laws that are still the absolute foundation of mechanics today.
Think of these 3 laws as the pillars for everything that moves. The first one, inertia, is kind of the law of laziness. Things just want to keep doing whatever they're already doing. The second law is that famous equation you've probably seen, F equals ma. It's the key that links force, mass, and acceleration. And the third law tells us that forces are never lonely. They always come in pairs. You push on a wall, and guess what? The wall pushes back on you just as hard.
Let's make that second law really practical. Imagine you push a basketball with all your might. It goes flying, right? Okay, now use that exact same push on a car. It's not going to go very far, is it? Why? The force is the same, but the car has way more mass, so that same force results in a tiny little acceleration. And that, right there, is F equals ma in action.
So this idea of mass leads us perfectly into a topic that honestly trips up just about everyone at some point, the difference between mass and weight. I promise you, they are not the same thing, and for an engineer, knowing the difference is absolutely critical.
Let's break it down and clear this up for good. Mass is the amount of stuff an object is made of. It's measured in kilograms, and here's the key. Your mass is the same whether you're on Earth, on the moon, or floating in deep space. Weight, on the other hand, is a force. It's the force of gravity pulling on your mass. It's measured in newtons, and it totally changes depending on how strong gravity is.
And here's the perfect way to see that relationship. Your mass is constant. Here on Earth, gravity is pretty strong, so you have a certain weight. But if you were on the moon where gravity is only about 1/6 as strong, your mass would be exactly the same, but you'd weigh only a fraction of what you do here. You'd feel incredibly light, but there's still just as much you as there was before.
Okay, we've got the big concepts down. Now let's talk about a force that affects, and I mean this literally, everything we do. I'm talking about friction. It's the ultimate adversary to motion, and trust me, without it, our world would be completely unrecognizable.
So what's actually causing it? Well, even surfaces that feel perfectly smooth to your hand, like glass or polished metal, are actually really rough if you zoom in, way down to a microscopic level. They're full of tiny little peaks and valleys. And when you try to slide 2 surfaces past each other, all those little bumps grind and lock into each other, creating a force that resists the movement. That resistance, that's friction.
And get this, friction isn't just a one-size-fits-all deal. There's static friction, which is the really stubborn force you have to overcome just to get something to start moving. You know that initial grunts it takes to push a heavy piece of furniture? That's you beating static friction. Once it's sliding, you're fighting the slightly weaker kinetic friction. And then there's rolling friction, which is generally the weakest of them all, and it's precisely why wheels were a total game changer for civilization. So we have all these forces swirling around us all the time. Gravity, friction, pushes, pulls. It's kind of a chaotic mess. So how in the world do engineers make sense of it all to design things like bridges and airplanes that, don't fall apart? They need a way to see the invisible.
And they have an amazing tool for it. It's called a free body diagram. This might just be the single most important tool in an engineer's basic toolkit. It's a simple sketch that takes an object, isolates it from everything around it, and then uses arrows to show every single force acting on it. It's how you turn that invisible chaos into a clear, understandable picture.
And there's a step-by-step recipe to get it right. First, you just draw the object by itself like it's floating in space. Then you start adding arrows for all the external forces, things pushing on it, its own weight pulling it down. After that, you replace everything that was supporting it, like cables or hinges, with the forces they provide. You label absolutely everything. And suddenly, boom, you have a perfect map of the physics.
And I'm not kidding about how important this is. This isn't just a friendly suggestion. As this textbook quote says, it is the mandatory first step always. Because if your free body diagram is wrong, every single calculation you do after that will be wrong too. It is the absolute foundation. Okay, so now we have our diagram, our awesome map of all the forces. But how does a picture turn into a number an engineer can actually use? Let's say we need to know the exact force pulling on a support cable for a big tower. How do we do that?
This is where the drawing turns into math. First, you map out the cable's path through 3D space. From there, you figure out its pure direction. That's called a unit vector. Think of it like a perfect little compass needle that just points along the cable. Finally, you take that pure direction and you multiply it by the strength or magnitude of the force in the cable. And this is what you get. It all boils down to this one, single, elegant line of text. This Cartesian vector tells an engineer everything they need to know. The force is pulling with 30 units of strength in the x direction, minus 20 in the y, and minus 60 in the z. It is a complete, three-dimensional blueprint of an invisible force.
So, let's end on this thought. Just for a second, look around you right now. Think about the chair you're sitting in, the floor holding you up, maybe the lamp hanging from the ceiling. Every single one of those things is in a perfect state of balance, a quiet, complex dance of tension, compression, gravity, and friction. Now that you know how to look for them, what invisible forces can you see at play?